This video is going to take you through the review and practice problems for the Unit 3 test. As we go through, I'm going to work through the different problems as well as explain the variations of the problems that you are likely to see on your test. There are multiple versions of this, and of course you can see on your screen. Be sure to listen as well as watch the video. So putting the video on mute is a thing that people do. And the explanation is as important as just getting a bunch of work written down. So without further ado, let's take a look at this. So the first type of question that you're going to see on the test is it's going to be a box, and it's going to have a bunch of numbers in that box, and you are going to identify which ones of those numbers are imaginary numbers, and you're just going to circle them. So there'll be like a box with these numbers in it, and you'll just put a circle around the ones that are imaginary. So we have 3 examples. These aren't necessarily the ones that you'll see, but they could be, who knows. So let's take a look at this. So the square root of -9, if you were to try to simplify that, that would be the square root of 9 times -1, and the square root of 9 is 3, and the square root of -1 is I, and so you would circle the square root of -1. Now the next one is negative the square root of 16. So what that's driving at is, does the placement of that negative matter? Well, yes, because the square root of 16 is 4, so negative the square root of 16 is -4, which is definitely real. We can go and find that on the number line. So you would not circle negative the square root of 16. Now the next one taps into what's called the higher powers of I, and that's kind of an interesting thing to look at. I have some illustrations that I use. It taps into a part of math called modular arithmetic. But so let's take a look at this. So we have 4i to the third. So the 4 is clearly real. It's just a question of what are we going to do with that I to the third. So I to the third literally means I times I times I. That's what raising something to the third power means. But I times I is I squared. And we know from our lesson that I squared is -1. And so 4i squared, or I to the third, is 4 times -1 times I. Well, 4 times -1 is -4, but notice that the I is still there. And so that one is imaginary. And so you would circle it. Now, the intent with this question is not for you to do any work, okay? So hopefully when you're watching this, you'll remember that I to the third power is -I, but it's still got an I in it. Unlike, say, I squared is -1, which is real. Now, here's the bonus, okay, why I want you guys to have the volume up and I want you to watch all of this is I'm going to give you some extra credit opportunities throughout this video. So here is your first extra credit opportunity. When you are given your test, I want you to draw a smiley face next to your name. Okay, and if you draw a smiley face next to your name, you will get a bonus point on your test. Okay, I would make a note of that right now. Hit pause and write that down somewhere so you get an extra point. Just put a smiley face next to your name. Okay, free points. Don't turn them down. Next one is be able to add, subtract, and multiply complex numbers. So for the examples, I have subtraction and I have multiplication. And that's because if you can subtract and multiply, you can add. I didn't feel like we needed to review that. Now, subtraction has one specific kind of mistake that students are very, very prone to doing, and that's not distributing the negative. So when you are doing this, okay, remember that you are subtracting the entire complex number. So you are subtracting the 3, but you're also subtracting the 3i. if one of the numbers inside that second set of parentheses is already negative, then when you subtract a negative, that would be the same as adding, and you would put a plus sign. And then we simply combine like terms. So we have 1 minus 3, which gives us negative 2, and then 2i plus, or sorry, minus, I would say plus negative 3i, or 2i minus 3i, which is negative I or negative 1i. I do not care if you want to put the 1 there, that's totally fine. Okay, so negative 2 minus 2i. Do make sure that you have them in the correct order. Okay, so you need to have it in that a plus bi form. Okay, so your real number comes first and your imaginary number comes second. Now for the multiplication, I saw a lot of people were foiling this on their homework, and that's totally fine. If you looked at my answer keys that I've done out for the test, I foiled it. Okay, I did not area model the multiplication, but I was taught, sorry, I'm tired. It's been a long day. But I have been doing this a lot longer, so I can foil really fast. I honestly don't care. Just, but for consistency, let's go and area model this. So this is 2 plus 5i into minus 4i. 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 5 is 5i is 10i. 2 times negative 4i is negative 8i. And then negative 4i times positive 5i is negative 20i squared. Now just kind of coming over here, negative 20i squared, remember that I squared is equal to negative 1. So negative 20 times negative 1 is a positive 20. So when I go to add up all of these, I will have 4. And then this is 10i minus 8i, or 2i. And then this one down here is a positive 20. 4 plus 20 is 24. Okay, so there's your multiplication. Now, because there are different versions of the test, I do believe that there is a version that has complex conjugates for the multiplication problem, meaning it's like 2 plus 5i, 2 minus 5i, or you could have like 2 plus 4i, 2 minus 4i. When you have conjugates, the I terms are going to cancel out, and you'll be left with a real number. Okay, so there was a homework problem that did that. If you did the homework, okay, there was a homework problem that did that. So you would be able to see how that works out. So if you get that version of the test, don't be surprised. Okay, now you might not get that version of the test. Just now for your second bonus point. So get ready to write this down. You are going to write down your favorite fruit in the upper right corner. Okay, your favorite fruit in the upper right corner of your test. So pause the video, write that down. You're going to write favorite fruit, upper right corner. Okay, and that will give you your second bonus point for the test. And I mean like percentage bonus points, so not necessarily raw total bonus points. I don't actually have a raw total for the total number of points on the test yet. Okay, be able to identify solutions from a graph. So you will see a graph, and then there's like a box over to the right, okay, and it is going to ask you what are the solutions. I do want you to write x equals and x equals. Don't just write numbers over there, okay? And so what we'd be looking for is we'd be looking for those x-intercepts. So we got one right there, and then we have one right here. And so for this particular problem, we would say x is equal to 5 and x is equal to 7. Yours could have a positive and a negative. It could have 2 negatives. It could be like this and have 2 positives. One of them could be 0. Okay, don't overthink it. You're looking for the x-intercepts. Okay, so for your third bonus point, or you probably catch on to what we're doing here. For your third bonus point, I want you to write the name of a parent or guardian, okay? Whoever, when I look in focus and I look to see who is in charge of you, okay? It could be mom, dad, or a guardian. a grandparent, just make sure that it is somebody who is listed in Focus, that when I go in, and don't use some nickname, like whatever, I go into Focus and I look on your parent information and it's going to show me who do I need to call. Okay. So you're going to write the name of a parent or guardian, and you can write that right underneath your name. So you're going to have your name, Stan student. And then you're going to have, I don't know what Stan's dad's name is, Stuart student. Okay. So Stan's dad, Stuart, I guess. Okay. So you're going to put that, you have the name of a parent or guardian that I can like reference in Focus. Should I decide to do that? If I think that you're writing down your friend's parent's name or something, I'm going to go check. So don't make me do that. I don't really want to do that. So name of a parent or guardian right underneath your name. Okay, write it down because you want to get these points. Okay, be able to factor quadratics. So there are, I don't have the copy of the test, they're like over there, but yeah, a copy of the test in front of me, but there are a variety of these. I think the difficulty level of the different versions of tests balance out. So there's like maybe a version where the factoring is harder, but the solving is easier, and then vice versa. So yeah, I am just picking a sample. So we're asked to factor, and you can tell on here we have a sample of the difference of squares, and then we have like a trinomial. Remember that your first step in factoring is always to look for a GCF, okay? Always, always, always look for a GCF. So the 100x squared minus 36, you can, I hope you can see that there's a common factor of 2 because they're both even numbers, but there's actually a bigger common factor, and that bigger common factor is a 4. And when I factor out the 4, if you say 4 times what gives you 100, that is 25, and 4 times what gives you 36, that is 9. If you factor out the 2, you'll end up with like 50x squared minus 18, and then you kind of stall out. Or you would notice that 50 and 18 are even, which means you can go and get another 2 out of it because the 50 and the 18 are both even, and so you can end up with the 4. 2 times 2 is 4. Okay, so you can get there that way as well. It's just kind of doing it in 2 steps instead of 1. I think most of you can recognize, if you're looking at 2 even numbers, that they have a common factor of 2. I don't know that 4 times 9 is 36 is one of the common ones that people know really fast. So now, looking at that, we have 25x squared minus 9. That is the difference of squares. And so that factors into what are called conjugates. I referred to those earlier. Conjugates are when you're going to have 1 plus and 1 minus, and then you just look at the square root or whatever squared gives you that term. So what squared gives me 25? That would be 5. What squared gives me x squared? X. What squared gives me 9? That would be 3. And so the complete factorization on that is 4, 5x plus 3, 5x minus 3. And you should do that using the formula. Do not do the area model for that. Now, full disclosure, there is at least one version of the test where when you take out the common factor, that's all you're going to be able to do, is take out the common factor. So you're going to take out the common factor and look at what's left, and what's left is done. So if you get that version of the test, I don't want you to freak out, okay? It's not going to be all the versions, but like one of the versions, it doesn't, it doesn't factor anymore. Okay. Second one. So we are trying to generate our factors. So we're going to go put our area model off to the side. Okay. And the x squared goes in the upper left, and the negative 14 goes in the lower right. And now we are looking for 2 factors of 14 that add up to negative 5. So my factors of 14 are 1 times 14, and then 2 times 7, and that's it. And 2 times 7 is the pair that works. if I have a positive 2x and a negative 7x, then those would add up to give me the negative 5x. So we have 2x and negative 7x. And then the x squared factors into just x times x, and then we have a 2 and a negative 7. So my factors are x plus 2 and x minus 7. Does not matter which order you write those in. Another thing to remember about the factors is that some of them will have a leading coefficient. You will need to be able to factor with the leading coefficient. I think I picked one of those. I did not. Okay, let me address that then. Yeah, that you might have some that have a leading coefficient. So hang on, I gotta write a problem. Okay, so if you had to factor, say, this 2x squared minus 5x minus 3, okay, so we're going to try to get that factored. We have the 2x squared. In the upper left, we have the negative 3. We actually need to multiply those, so we need to do 2 times negative 3 and get the negative 6. And then look at the factors there. Oh, I picked a good one. There are actually 2 ways that you can get a negative 5. You could do positive 1 and negative 6, or you could do negative 2 and negative 3, which would also give you a negative 5. The reason you do not want the negative 2 and the negative 3 is because negative 2 times negative 3 would give you positive 6. And the number at the end is negative. So we're going to do positive 1 and negative 6. Then we have to do GCF factoring. I'm going to avoid big numbers, and I'm going to avoid negatives if I can. So GCF going to the left is just x, and then that's 2x, and that's a 1, and this is a minus 3. And so my factors are 2x plus 1 and x minus 3. Okay, which, if you're wondering what I was doing, I was doing the problem out. So I just went in the other direction. Okay, so you can see all versions of those. So you can see stuff with the leading coefficient, stuff without the leading coefficient, difference of squares, greatest common factor. I did mention that some of, like, at least one problem on one version, you're going to get that GCF, and then there's nothing else you can do. So don't freak out if you think you have that version of the test. All right, so for your next extra credit point, okay, you are somewhere on your page going to draw a tree, okay? Like just a tree. So trunk and like a little tree, okay? Like something like that, okay? It's a tree. Okay, we could like color it. There's no brown color on this tree, okay? So some kind of tree somewhere on your page. Make sure I can see it, okay? So make sure I can see where the tree is. Yeah, so make sure I can see where the tree is. So put it someplace like on a corner, next to a problem, next to your scratch work, okay? You're gonna draw a little picture of a tree, okay? You can make it any kind of tree you want. Make it a maple tree. You can make it a pine tree, okay? So you can do like, whoops, that's an eraser. You could do like pine tree like this, or like a Christmas tree. All right, okay, just something that looks like a tree somewhere on your test where I could find it. So if I don't give you the bonus point for it and you're like, but here it is, like super small, hiding behind my scratch work, like, okay, don't draw it so big though that your neighbor's like, what are they doing? All right, next up, be able to solve quadratics by factoring. So this is the difference between just factoring and then using factoring as a way to solve an equation, which is ultimately why we care about factoring in the first place. So we want to use factoring to figure out the values of x that are going to make this equation true. In order to do that, we are going to use what's called the zero product property, which I abbreviate ZPP. And to do that, we need a 0 and we need a product. In other words, multiplication. So we need to see a 0, and then we need to see some stuff being multiplied. So the first thing I'm going to do is what we call set this equal to 0. So I'm going to do that by adding 15 to both sides. So we get x squared plus 8x plus 15 is equal to 0. That satisfies the 0 part of the 0 product property. Then we are going to use factoring to generate the products, which is why we practice with the factoring in the first place. Okay, so we're going to use the factoring there, and we're going to bring the area model off to the side. I do not want your area model in the middle of the problem. Okay, so in the problem, I want to see you get it equal to 0 if you need to, and then the expression, and then the factors right underneath it. The area model is considered scratch work. So in this case, we need two numbers that multiply to 15, but add up to 8. And those would be 3x and 5x. Okay, so 3 times 5 would give me that 15. And then 3 plus 5 would give me the 8. And of course, I didn't turn my eraser on, so I've made that worse. There we go. Okay, this is one of the nice ones because there's only one way you can get that x squared to factor, x, and this is a 3, and this is a 5. So my factors are x plus 3 and x plus 5. Now here's how the 0 product works, a 0 product property works. So if you have two things and they are multiplied together and the product is 0, then what must be true is either the first equation or first factor is equal to 0 or the second factor is equal to 0. You are okay with jumping straight to x is -3 and x is -5. Okay, you do not have to show these middle steps. However, if you are confused at all, please show them. So the first factor is 0, so then you would subtract 3 from both sides. That's where the -3 comes from, and then subtract 5 from both sides. And so our answers are x is -3 and x is -5. You do need to generate both answers. Okay. There is one that's going to end up being a difference of squares. So I think there's another difference of squares. One version of the test, it's the same difference of squares that you had in the first part. So that's a lucky break. But like I said, I've gone through all the different versions, and where like one version might have like a break where you see the same factoring problem twice. The other versions might get a break in that like the numbers are easier, the numbers are all positive, where that test that catches the break there has some like negatives and stuff thrown in. So I think all of the versions are equally hard. You just might catch your breaks in different places. Just remember to get like the 0 first, and then you go through the factoring. You have to show me the factors. You cannot just jump right to the answers. Okay, your last bonus point. So this is going to give you up to 5 points. So it'll be like a half a point each, but when you look at the percentages out of 50 points, the highest percentage you'll be able to get is a 105. Okay, so the last one is I want you to draw a circle around your tree. Okay, so write that down. You're going to draw a circle around your tree. Now, just as a recap, because on the last slide, I'm not going to repeat it. So for your first bonus point, you draw a smiley face beside your name. Happy. We're happy we're taking a test. Second one, you're going to write your favorite fruit in the upper right-hand corner. So you're just going to write whatever your favorite fruit is. Think about it ahead of time so you know what it is. For the next one, you're going to write the name of a parent, guardian, grandparent, whoever I can find in focus that's responsible for you, whoever that is. If you are an emancipated senior, I guess you can write that. Okay, focus should show me that as well. I've had that happen. And you're going to write that underneath your name. Okay, name of parent, guardian. For the next bonus point, you're going to draw a tree. Okay, maple tree, pine tree, I don't care. Draw a tree somewhere where I can see it. Okay. So it's going to be a tree. And then for the last bonus point, you're going to draw a circle around the tree. 5. Okay, Last is be able to solve quadratics using the quadratic formula. Now, these are going to come out one of two ways. Either when you get to the discriminant will not be simplifiable, or it will be a perfect square and you will be able to take the square root of it. One of them comes out as 0. Okay, so one of them comes out as 0, or they're not going to simplify at all, but you will not need to simplify like messy square roots and deal with the simplification over the fraction or anything like that. None of the problems do that. None of the problems on any versions of the test. So for the quadratic formula, the quadratic formula is the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And you can use Desmos to evaluate your discriminant to get the b squared minus 4ac. Now, before you do any of that, you do need to get a 0 on one side. So for this problem, we're going to be adding 1 to both sides and then identify our A. Our A is 1, our B is 2, and our C is 1, okay? And then you go and dump it in. So this is what I would want to see for your work. The opposite of B, well, B is 2. So the opposite of 2 is -2, plus or minus 2 squared. Whoops. Sorry about that. I don't even know how that happened. It did the 2 twice. Minus 4 times 1 times 1, all over 2 times 1. You're going to go over to Desmos, and you're going to do 2 squared minus 4 times 1 times 1, just like that. That's going to give you 4 minus 4 or 0. Okay, you can do that part on Desmos. Coming back over here, -2 plus or minus the square root of 0 over 2. Well, the square root of 0 is 0. So this is -2 over 2 or -1. Okay. A lot of you are going to get like a number like 13 or 19 under the square root, in which case you're done. Okay. You cannot simplify that at all. If you get something like the square root of 4, okay, you would say 2 and then you would take it out the rest of the way. If you get something like -15, okay, that simplifies into -1 times 15. What's the square root of -1? Oh, that's right, I. Okay, and that's all you would do for that part. Okay, so you would, if you get a negative under the square root, you're just going to pull that I out. None of them are harder than that. So none of them should involve simplifying a square root where you have numbers that need to cancel. You should not have to cancel anything with your denominators. So the last little piece about the extra credit is you might be wondering, okay, I've got all these things written down. I got these 5 things written down that I need to do that I can get my 5 points. What you may do on the day of the test is you may have a small piece of paper, like a Post-it note, okay? And you may write just the directions. So smiley, name, fruit, tree, circle, whatever, okay? Just on that, I'm going to ask to see it. Okay, I'm going to ask to see it. I'm going to confirm that you don't have anything else on it. I'm going to turn it upside down, okay? And I will let you keep that with you to start your test. I am going to ask you this. If you have watched this whole video and you have written down what you do for extra credit, do not tell your friends who have not watched the video, okay? That is your payoff for watching the video, watching it all the way through with the volume up, is that you now know that there's this way to get some extra points. And your classmates that did not watch the video don't deserve to get just extra points just handed to them for absolutely no reason. So just asking you guys to keep it on the DL. Okay. Just kind of come in with your piece of paper, show it to me when I hand the tests out, and you will be good to go. That's it. Managed to get this whole review in under 30 minutes. I also let you know about some of the variations that are on the test, the different versions, things that you might see. And come on test day, we'll do about 30 minutes of Q&A. Come ready to do that 30 minutes of Q&A. As always, you know where to reach me with questions.